in this turbulent society, not sure of what tomorrow is going to bring or where our happiness actually comes from. And then that spills over into our relationships with other people. So we have to understand what trauma is. And there's different levels of trauma. There's different levels of stress. And we know in certain communities, when some type of horrific event happens, they have what on hand? What do they have? Somebody know what they have on hand for the children? What they have? They have counseling on hand instantly. Tragedy, shooting happens at the school, first thing they want to do, get them into counseling. We got counselors here to talk to them, to talk them down, to walk them through. We like that in our communities. Not that we didn't have the financial resources, but they just were not distributed in the right type of way, because we face trauma every day. I'm quite sure some of you in this room, or most of you in this room, have heard gunshots in your neighborhood. Anybody heard gunshots? Raise your hand, you done heard gunshots in your neighborhood. Anybody had any shotguns? But that's another story. I'm glad you watch your hands. Listen. So you know what gunfire is, but gunfire should not be a part of the norm in no civilization, period. It just should not be there. But by way of that, we have grown numb to things such as that. We have grown numb, or so we thought, to people that we love and we care about. That's almost like a secondhand trauma type of a thing. That something happens to them and we're told about what actually happens to them. And it affects us in such a way too. So I wanted to discuss some of the components of trauma. How many people in here feel that they may be suffering from some type of trauma? Raise your hands. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Raise your hands. Okay, some people are being truthful with that. Some people don't even know they got trauma. They don't even know. They think it's normal. Why? Because they've been dealing with it for so long. Oh, this is just me. No, that's trauma what you got. So trauma interferes with the smooth operation of your life, period. Why? Because of your relationships with family, with children, with other people. And you can have what you call reoccurring trauma. Reoccurring trauma is something like being agitated. You can be in a workplace, you can be in a neighborhood, you can be in a store, you can be anywhere, and somebody could say something that triggers you into agitation that's triggering some of that latent trauma that you had. Absolutely. And as a result of that, somebody may be on the 6 o'clock news. Somebody may be on the morning edition. You never know, because those traumas we have not worked through. We just have not worked through them. We thought we could put them in the back of our mind. But we put them in the back of our mind, but we didn't put them in no cage, because the cage is rage, and at any time it may manifest itself. So now we're living in those days and times right now, to where we need to be able to break down the components of what trauma is and how we can deal with it. And as being effective in dealing with it, we can help other people. Why? Because some people know the hell that you've been through. Some people know the hell that you're in. Some people will say, I have no idea what's going on. So it's by way of that we care to share those levels of information with you. Because it should not be normal for a 5-year-old to see a dead body. That's right. See, they may see a dead body on the street, might see a dead body in their house. Why? Because people try to deal with trauma. That's it. You know, trauma doesn't always come by somebody dying. You know, it can be a traumatic accident. It's just different level. You know, I was raised in areas to where people OD'd. That's a trauma to people.
Yes, sir.
Because that's somebody's mother, that's somebody's brother, that's somebody's cousin, that's somebody's sister. That's a trauma. See, people OD and people, oh, somebody, you know, we took it almost as a norm. Oh, so-and-so, he OD'd today. OD means it's over with. It's over with. See, that's a period. OD means it's over with. And sometimes it's latent trauma because it stays in our mind and we don't think about it till later, because it's been a seed that's been planted in our mind, and it kind of destroys our interaction with other people and situations because certain things trigger it. It triggers it once again. You know, ain't no telling how you may respond or how you may react. Just being brought back into music can do it too. Some of y'all didn't know that. Music can trigger that too. You know, you might, I remember that music. I remember that music when so-and-so died. We was listening to that. You're going to attach the music with the events. So now, we have to try to dismantle trauma. You know, this is, I keep saying it's important. Why? Because I know it to be. By me being a minister, a grand sheik here in Advance of Society, you deal with all age groups of people. You got things happening with little children. We don't really understand why. It's trauma. I think some of it is like birth trauma. Something that the parent went through while they was pregnant with the child. Generational trauma. And then it started to manifest in them when certain triggers was hit. And they, he just acting out. That's trauma. So we haven't been able to effectively deal with that because we haven't really had those components. How many of y'all ever had to talk to a counselor coming up? Other than if you got in trouble in school and they told you go see the counselor. You know, I'm saying, how many of you have been guided toward a counselor because there's some trauma that took place in the house or in the neighborhood? Whoever saw that you were all right, whoever came to your aid and said, man, you all right? They just had a shooting over here. You all right? They just tell you wait till the gunfire die down and you can go back on the street. Yeah. You can go back outside. But see, playing ain't the same no more because it affects different people differently. They going out there because they want to see the murder scene or they want to see the scene of the accident. They want to see the blood, the glass. They want to see what they missed. That's trauma. And it keeps remanifesting itself. It keeps remanifesting itself. And we just didn't know. But now we know. And it's a good thing that seeds being planted because through that, it can give us an interesting insight on who we are and how we got to be who we are. When we think we're dealing with it well, if I just don't say too much and I just kind of be still, everything's going to be all right. No, it ain't. No, it ain't. It ain't going to be all right because it's going to come to the eruption point. And when the eruption point, they're going to be saying, what did I do to him? It wasn't what you did to him. It's what he did to himself with all the backup. And you just happen to be in that position today where you caught the blunt of it. That's it. That's it. That's it. So we have a lot of trauma with our young sisters today. With our young sisters, it's a lot of trauma. It's a lot of trauma. We kind of see it all the time. Some sisters be so traumatized, they want to fight men. I'm saying, like, this is like some unheard of stuff. This serious business. How many of y'all don't even heard them tell them, oh, come on with it? You know, to me, that's the most foolish thing that you can say because some people may take you up on that. Sir. See, we don't have some of these young men like we had when we was coming up. Your mother say, don't put your hands on no girl. Some of them don't have them instructions. They'll lay hands on them. They'll lay hands on them. They'll lay pipes on them. They'll lay bullets on them. And you see that all the time too. And they'll tell them, quit playing with me. See, they may give you a warning, quit playing with me. You ain't gonna do nothing. You ain't gonna do nothing. Next thing they know, they head in the handbasket. This serious business out here. People talking about what you talk about. Go look at the news. That's all you gotta do is look at the news. That's right. Just don't think, oh, why did he do that? Trauma building up in this situation, not that it's justified, but we can see where it started at. And they didn't even know they was dealing with a powder keg. He seemed just so nice. Yeah, because he was trying to suppress the trauma. He was just trying to be cool. You don't never know what's going on in the noodle, what's going on in the mind. You never know what's cooking up there. You just don't know. Any of us, we don't know. We've been in situations where we didn't know that one day was going to be somebody's last day. We didn't know it. You didn't know. Some of you got traumas when you see people walking around with hoods on. Got their head down, walking around with hoods on. Sometimes you back straight up. You get your back up against the wall. You say, oh, something getting ready to go down. Why? That's rememberable trauma right there. Like, hey, you watch how people hold their hands. Some of y'all watch Why you got his hand like that? Why you got his hand cuffed like that? Why you got his hand cuffed like that? People are like, I know I'm gonna stay out the way because they shouldn't be cuffed. It should be so you can see him. So that's trauma. Something just could be wrong with his hand, but it's memorable trauma that we have actually underwent. See? So when we find ourselves back in those given situations, we have to have PowerPoints in which we can talk ourselves down. See, nobody can talk you down like you can talk yourself down. See? But you got to be willing to deal with that. And anybody that you bring into your circle that's going to be one of your fad five or something like that, they don't really necessarily know you. So you got to let them know some of these triggers that you may have, so they don't misread what it is. I don't like that. And when you saying they like, oh, that ain't nothing. Oh, it can be something. You just don't know after I've let you know. Oh, I don't like that. You may be with somebody, you may end up somebody's rap partner unknowingly. Why? Because you didn't know they trigger sometimes. You ain't know when we got to work with people. We got to work with our people. We got to bring them down. Oh, come on, let's go. See, you on 6, but I can see you going to 10, and 10 can be the end for somebody. It can easily be the end for somebody, and guess what? They done pulled you in right with them. Right with them. And you be like, why did you do that? See, because it's some type of code. You just ain't gonna walk off and just leave them. You'll be trying to get them, come on, man, let's go. And all in your mind is like, this ain't gonna end well. Right. It's like you just almost want to tackle them. Let's go. Because it ain't gonna end well, period, And sometimes we had a mad dog thing to where we'd turn on the person that's with us. Get your hands off me. What you doing? Trauma. It's trauma. This is trauma that we talking about. It's latent trauma. And it especially happens when some people that have been institutionalized and they put back in what they consider to be normal lifestyle situations, and they start dealing with women, and women start dealing with men that have not cured the trauma. And then there's certain things that trigger certain people. I don't know who all it triggers, but certain things trigger certain people. When somebody say, where you going? How many of y'all ever heard that and y'all felt some kind of way? Somebody say, hey, where you going? Where you going? Yeah, where you going?
Police.
What time you gonna be back?
None.
Who you going with?
None.
So that's a trigger to some people, and people don't know that's an irritating trigger. What?
Yes, it is.
What's your point of reference? What? Why you want to know where I'm going? I just want to know. They don't know. Them is like almost like some slave traumas. Like, hey, where you going? Hey, wait, get back over here. And that triggers people, and that could destroy a good relationship because people don't understand those components. They just don't understand how that triggers somebody to act in a certain type of a manner. And they say, oh, you acting funny. Or you got something up. You in the room by yourself. Why? Because I got to deal with myself. I got to deal with myself. Can't nobody deal with you like you can deal with yourself. Nobody don't even know the formula. Somebody might ask you what you thinking about. You can't tell them what you're thinking about because you can't even describe what you're going through. The conflict can't even be told in words. And sometimes they think that's a holdout. So now you're living not only for one person, you're living for two people. See, you're living for two people then. So inside of that, you gotta bow down to some degree if you want that situation to hold some type of stability. But in some situations, it don't get better because people don't understand what you're actually going through and how you're trying to maintain a sense of being normal. So that's when you need counseling. That's when people that's sincerely trying to be with you and be in a part of your life, that's when you really need to talk about this post-traumatic stress type of a situation. You need to have that, because like I say, different things, triggered us different type of ways. What's one of your triggers, Rebecca?
Well, I mean, when I look at the conditions of children, especially, and how children are being neglected, how children are being misused and abused, and not being properly taken care of or guided directly, in the right way. See, that triggers, That triggers me.
Let me ask you this here. This is not cut. Let me ask you this here. See, when we talk about something triggering somebody, sometimes that has taken place in our lives.
Right.
So when it takes place in our lives and we see a manifestation of it someplace else, like you say, that's your trigger. It triggers, you know, the pain that you may have internalized through that process.
Absolutely.
And you, sometimes you don't really know how to deal with it, but you know you're upset about it.
Right.
You know, you truly upset about that.
Absolutely.
So that's a trigger, and it's sometimes it's like the trigger of abandonment,
Right.
and neglect.
Right.
Listen, this goes deep down the rabbit hole.
Right.
See, it goes deep down the rabbit hole that we ain't even sat down and even thought about. Why?
Right.
We had parents that didn't necessarily know how to even be a parent. Young. They didn't have no parenting classes or nothing.
Right.
They were just doing the best they could to try to sustain us. They just didn't know. So as a result of that, they couldn't pass it down because they didn't know themselves. So now here it is, we don't know where to divert, you know, the situation, or divert the lack of information. Where should it go? You know, because it's hurts. See, it's hurts. Like, how do we get here? You know, how do we get away from here? You know, what do we learn while we're actually been in a state like that? Because that's one of the most important keys.
I mean, the adverse impact on the child's mind. The adverse impact.
Tell us something about that.
I mean, what I'm saying is that, sometimes, we find ourselves, caught up in situations or in circumstances or in groups of people.
Yes, sir.
And we don't know what's going on, until something happens. It doesn't have an adverse impact on how we think going forward. And like you were saying, without counseling, it like a seed, it grows and grows and grows. And before you know it, you're not the same no more.
That's the key.
See?
I like that. You're not the same anymore. What do you think, Quali?
Presumptive authority.
What is it?
Presumptive or presumption of authority. People telling you what to do. That's a trigger for me. I will surrender it, and to assume you can get it, that kind of sets me off, you know what I mean?
Where do you think that comes from?
Probably not being a good student and taking orders from your family growing up early on.
Right.
Not listening, paying attention to what your mom and pop might be talking about. You don't want to pay attention to it, and then you kind of go off into your own thing. So it grows with your years. I found that to be something that lingers on.
See, and that's what somebody made a statement about generational. Mm-hmm. Like you say, you don't really know why you did what you did when you were a little one, but you know you did it. That's what I'm saying. You didn't have that level of information to where you could describe it or articulate it in that type of a manner. You didn't know. So, but you know, I ain't trying to hear what y'all talking about. I ain't going, listen, I'm going to do what I do when I do what I do. It's just that simple. How many of us had that? How many of us had that on switch to where we're going to go on and on regardless of what somebody in authority told us? We're going to keep it moving. Raise your hand. You had that. Everybody hand in here should go up. Because we know some of them conditions, but just think of that. You can have other siblings in the household and they don't do it. But it's something in you, like a trigger inside of you, that make you go contrary to the same bit of information. Strong. What you think, Heinz, babe? What's one of your triggers?
It's a pretty hard question for me to just throw an answer out. But I'm trying to understand the discussion. We're talking about trauma, right? And how trauma affects you as a person. And the close experience that I can share with trauma is like, recently, a couple years ago, I had my sentence commuted after 45 years of incarceration. To come from prison, to come back to society, to the old neighborhood, and to go through it, having a vision of what the neighborhood was while I'm incarcerated, we seem to be stuck in that period. People look the same, the environment and the landscape, as you remember, you still have that imprinted in your mind. But to be released into society after a long period of incarceration like that, you come to see a completely change in people and the environment. Me personally, I experienced this trauma. The first couple of days, happy to be released with family, with friends, and enjoying life, riding in the cars instead of prison bus, and I ain't got to look too hard to see things and be nosy and what's going on with the world and enjoying that. But in the process of all of that going on in my mind, my biology was going through a change that I didn't understand. Eating a diet versus coming out here and getting on a diet out of fast food and things that crackers and burros and stuff versus prison food. Didn't understand the trauma that was causing to my body at that moment. So after a couple of days, it broke down. I'm going to the parole office to report, and all of a sudden, I'm losing my vision. I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling like I'm gonna die, like having a stroke. All the systems. I don't know what's going on with me. Exactly. All that instant trauma, that built up trauma that I thought I had a wall against, it hit. So, as former prisoners and people coming out here from a long-term incarceration, like they say, they don't have nothing that we can resort to help us readjust. Versus in the suburban areas where they got the money, money in school. Well, it's the same thing with a guy coming out of prison after all that time. He needed help. I know I did. I was scared. I was scared to death. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was affecting my body until I got with the doctors and the psychologists at that time at my care health center, and they explained it to me. Hey, y'all taking them too fast. Family, they gave a little celebration, crowd, and all that.
Speeding you up through the process.
It hit me, it tore me down. So yeah, I understood trauma in that fashion, and hopefully these remarks for people that's listening might can help somebody else that got loved ones coming from these institutions. Be careful how you reintroduce them back to the society with food and with parties.
Whew, that's cold piece. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Mo.
So what was the main thing that happened to make that adjustment? What happened to make that adjustment?
I don't quite understand the question.
So what was they did to help you make the transition? Obviously you made the transition. What was it that helped you?
A great family. A great family. All through my incarceration, I can say that I was blessed, and I give God all the honors for having brothers and sisters and parents. They didn't know the best, but the love that they had for a brother and a son, I never was absent that. I never wanted for anything. I never was not able to call home and have or a brother or a sister. And I had this. So family and friends and people that care about you, just to say, hey, we thinking about you, wishing you the best, we're trying to work to get you out of there. Just that kind of support helps. And if you're a person like I was that actually didn't want to be the person that I was before I came to prison, then you make that transformation with yourself by renewing your thoughts in your mind. So you say to yourself, well, people love me and support me, so I got to better myself in this, so when I do come back out there, I will have the intelligence to function as a productive citizen. So, more scientific American, I give it the highest honor because it actually changed my life. I didn't join because I wanted to be in the gang in prison. I joined because I heard the words that Prophet Ali spoke. And I started living that kind of life. And like it said in the scripture, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, all these things are added unto you.
Yes, sir.
It's true. I'm a living testimony. I would not forsake the prophet or my principles for nothing in this world. I would try to live this life just like the prophet instructed us to accordingly. So all I would say is that if you got loved ones incarcerated, bear with them. When they come home, don't let them go through that fast chain with fast food and the environment. I went through the old neighborhood. My memory of it, it was like
A war.
me seeing a movie on television where they in World War II on the east side of Detroit. My neighborhood used to be beautiful. I didn't remember what I seen there. That moment, I felt something happen to me. That was that trauma you was talking about. I didn't recognize it then. I knew something was happening because of the sadness that I felt within. I felt broken. Like, what happened? How did this happen? You know? And then all of a sudden, the next day, it all just crashed. So, yeah, I experienced trauma like that.
I like how you was able to articulate it in so many different ways, because that's ultra important for people just being released back in society. And as we come back into society, you spoke about mental and physical, how it affected you in both ways. You know, because people would never think food would affect you. This is a different type of biology you've been introduced to. Now you've been getting all that artificial food up in there. Now you got the opportunity to come out here and eat what you want to eat and get some real food. So now it's having a different effect on your body and different chemicals being released in your mind. And as you trying to